The one thing that you've got to say about Mazda is they don't exactly conform. And I like that about them. When everybody else started abandoning sports cars and went down the hot hatch route in the 1980s, what did Mazda do? Well, they built a two-seater sports car, the MX-5. And look how that turned out for them. And then, of course, everyone started to think maybe small coupes would be the thing. You know, the Vauxhall Tigra, the Ford Puma. And they had sort of like small capacity, 16-valve, 4-cylinder engines in it. Well, Mazda built the MX-3, which was a small coupe, and it did have a small capacity engine, but it wasn't a 4-cylinder, 16-valve, no, it was a V6. And then, of course, when all the prestigious manufacturers with their large family SUVs turned their back on diesel and went down the plug-in hybrid route, what did Mazda do? They fitted theirs with an inline-6 turbo diesel engine. And then, of course, for their first electric car, did they build a medium-sized family SUV? No, they built a small 4-door coupe crossover thing that would barely do 100 miles because they said, what's the point in putting a big battery in it when no one really does that sort of mileage these days? Mazda like to do things their own way, and you have to commend them for that. So for their second electric car, has Mazda finally followed the crowd? Has Mazda finally given us the medium-sized family SUV that everyone else does? What do you think? Right, it's a medium-sized saloon car. They've hardly built a space rocket and put wheels on it, have they? It's a car that's going to compete in this D-sector saloon market, such as the Tesla Model 3, the Volkswagen ID7, Hyundai Ioniq 6, those style of cars. But of course, Mazda have hardly got a massive load of experience when it comes to electric cars. They've only given us one so far, that slightly quirky MX-30, which is now stock production. You know, that small coupe-like crossover with the rear hinge doors and a really small battery. So what could Mazda do when it came to sort of like building a car like this, an electric car like this? Well, this is what they did. They phoned up someone who has got a lot of experience of building electric cars and said, hey, do you fancy going halves on this next one that we're going to do? And that's effectively what we have here, because under the skin, this is a Changan Deepal SL03, which, as I'm sure you probably know, is a Chinese car. But before you get all upset about that, thinking it's just a Changan with a Mazda badge on it, there's a bit more to it than that, because obviously, as I say, this is a Mazda. And they've had a technical manufacturing partnership, those two companies, for quite some time now across in China. And this isn't something that's new to Mazda, you know, this sort of like partnering with someone else to build a car, because if you're as old as I am, you'll remember the Mazda MX-6, which was effectively a Ford Probe wearing a kimono. And the Mazda 2 Hybrid, well, I'm sure you've probably seen that car somewhere else before wearing a slightly different badge. But as I say, this is a Mazda. There's got to be something about it. There's got to be something that's just a little bit unconventional about it, because that's Mazda, that's the Mazda way. So do we get the best of both worlds? Do we get all the kind of conventional Changan electric car stuff with something a little bit unconventional and wacky from Mazda? However, as always, before we start the review, let's take a look at the main points of the car. So the new Mazda 6e is the latest entrant into the medium-sized D-segment saloon arena that has cars such as the Tesla Model 3, Hyundai Ioniq 6, Polestar 2 and Volkswagen ID7 already competing in it. Two battery sizes will be available, a smaller 68.8 kilowatt-hour unit for a WLTP range of 297 miles and a larger 80 kilowatt unit that extends that out to 342 miles. Both versions are single motor, rear wheel drive with either 250 PS in the smaller battery car or 245 PS in the larger. Two trim levels are available, either the Takumi or the Takumi Plus. And it will go on sale in the UK in 2026, with prices being announced closer to its on sale date. So, couple of questions. If it is effectively a Changan Deepal SL03 under the skin, how much Mazda-ness have Mazda managed to engineer into it? And have they gone too far? Because this medium-sized saloon car sector is normally quite a conservative one, with cars such as the Tesla Model 3 and Volkswagen ID7 selling in it. Well, when it comes to the design, it's definitely a Mazda. It's not just another car with a Mazda badge on the front of it. This is definitely a Mazda, and you can see the resemblance to the other cars within the Mazda range. Mazda call their design language Kodo Soul of Motion. Now normally when a designer talks like that, I kind of glaze over a bit and think, I don't know what you're talking about. But I sort of do with the Mazda, this soul of motion thing, because when you see the side profile, you'll understand it when you see it. Right, what have we got at the front here? Well, of course, you've got your traditional Mazda winged, well, not a grille, but a panel, if you like, with a big Mazda wing badge there. And then it's illuminated around here, and these bits at the side here illuminate as well as it's charging. I quite like that. That's quite cool and quirky. Your eyes are immediately drawn to these bits of the lamps here, which sweep from the front right round into the side of the car. These are your DRLs and turn indicators. Your main lamp unit's that bit, which you don't notice at first because it's hidden within this section here. That's a really neat trick. And the other bit I love about it are the lines. There's a line here and a line on the other side there that just sweep back and arc up the bonnet into the windscreen, up over the top of the car. It's in one flowing line. I really like that. That's stunning. Let's see, cooling's done down at the bottom as you'd expect because there's no open grille there. As I say, forward facing camera. You've got the air curtains at the side here that take the airflow round and then down the side of the car, so it's quite aero efficient as well, as you would want, being sort of like, you know, an electric car. I think it looks stunning in this melting copper colour. There's some great colours available in the car. 6 colours I think that's available on it. This is melting copper. I really like this one. It looks really cool on the car as well. So I think we're off to a really good start. As I say, it's definitely a Mazda. As I say, you can see it fitting within the Mazda range. It's got all the styling cues. It's got this lovely sharp nose, this almost negative space that comes into it. See these beautiful, very simple but elegant sort of like flowing lines, which is what you get from the other Mazdas in the range. So it's definitely not just some other car with a Mazda badge stuck on the front of it. Right, before we move back on to talk about the design of it, let's crunch some numbers a little bit, because this is quite a big car. So it sits right at the top end of that medium D segment saloon car market. It's more along the size of the Volkswagen ID7, which, you know, is a big car itself. It's 200 millimeters longer than a Tesla Model 3. It's just over 4.9 meters long, with a wheelbase that's just under 2.9 meters in length as well, so good interior space. You've also got good weight distribution with the car, which we'll talk about when we're driving more, but 43% weight at the front, 57% at the rear. Rear wheel drive, okay? They're just rear wheel drive. Don't get an all wheel drive one, but we'll go on to talk about tech spec a little bit later on. Oh, and you can tow with it as well, 1,500 kilos of a brake trailer. So if you're into caravanning and stuff like that, could be a good car for that. 2 models, Takumi or Takumi Plus. This is a Takumi. Both cars get 19-inch alloy wheels as standard, just different designs. Michelin E-Primacy tyres fitted there. But look at it, see what I mean about the design? I'm going to sound like a car designer here when I'm talking about this. It's got a cab back look, do you see what I mean? So you've got that real sort of like long thrusting nose with that lovely line, as I say, that comes out of the front grille and then just arcs up over the windscreen pillars along the roofline and then back into this rear hatch. It's a hatchback, it's a 5-door hatch, not a saloon, okay? That's good practicality. Flush door handles that pop out, which is nice, and then you've just got this other lovely line that just seems to appear at the top of this front wheel arch there and then run underneath the mirror to give that really strong shoulder line that goes all the way into the rear above the lights. I really like that. The only thing that really sort of grates on me a little bit is this piece of plastic trim here with Mazda in it. I don't see the need for that personally, but I quite like this textured bit down there and the fact that you've got that black sill there, so like it just sort of pinches the bodywork in a bit. Of course, you get the nice mirrors there with lots of tech on it. There's little cameras embedded underneath there, as you'd expect. And here's the other thing, look at this. Frameless doors as well, both of them. So it gives it more that kind of coupe-like look, doesn't it, from that point of view? So yeah, starting to see a lot of Mazda coming into the car here. And you've got a little bit of chrome that runs underneath the window line just to the back there, which I don't mind so much. And of course it's matched by this bit down there. Not normally a lover of chrome, but I don't mind that here because it's just that little bit and it helps define the car. But I think this is a really good looking car. I really do. I think it's a proper Mazda. And they see more of that round the back. Because look at the bum on it. The 6E is very sexy, I think. I really do love the way this car looks. The rear lights are very Mazda-like, you know, that you get on the Mazda 3 hatchback. I've done a review on that, by the way, in House of Cars. If you want to have a look at the Mazda 3 hatchback review, that's a good wee car. But that looks like that there. And again, it's a little bit like the old, I can't remember, the last generation RX-7, I think they said as well. That's where they've taken inspiration from. This is interesting because it's a floating spoiler. So this comes up, I think, above, what is it, 56 miles an hour, and then drops again at sort of like 30 odd miles an hour, and it helps with airflow and stability. But you've got a car wash mode where you can keep it down permanently, but it comes up permanently, I think, in the sport mode as well. So when you go into sport mode, it comes up irrespective of speed, but you can put it back down yourself if you want. But I do like that. It's a floating spot, so when it's up, it doesn't look like it's actually attached to the car. It looks quite cool. And I love this light bar along the top with these sort of like diamonds in the top there. Of course, it extends right across the top there. Mazda doing the whole lettering across the back, but I don't mind it too much because it's a bit smaller than you get on some cars. But again, I'd rather just have seen the Mazda logo there. Of course, you get your 6E badge there. Look at the way this curves into this negative space there. That's a good looking bit of design, I think. And of course, again, the black sort of rear bumper there just helps make the car look a little bit more, you know, squat and purposeful. Reversing camera as you'd expect, plus parking sensors, plus a nice diffuser section there. Right, as I say, it's a hatchback as well. I did tell you that, didn't I? Yeah, hatchback rather than a conventional saloon. What do we think? I think this is a really good looking car. I really like it. And I think it looks, well, like a Mazda, which to me was real key with the car, because when I heard it was a partnership car, you go, oh, hang on a minute. Are they going to, you know, is he going to lose something that makes a Mazda? But in terms of the way it's designed, absolutely not. I think this looks absolutely right. They've judged it just right, and I think it's a really good looking car. Big car, but a good looking car. But it doesn't really matter what I think, does it? Let's be honest, you know, it matters more what you think, no, because you might be out there interested in buying it. And are you interested in buying it? What do you think about it? Would you have this or a Tesla Model 3 or a Volkswagen ID7? I'll tell you what would be nice if Mazda did an estate version of it. That would be really cool, like they used to do with the old Mazda 6 and the 626. That would be really cool. But anyway, there's no mention of that at the moment. But there, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think of the Mazda 6e. Is it sexy? The 6e? Right, now, 5-door hatchback, as I say, which is good. Mazda say that this boot is 300 and something litres in size, okay? But they also quote 466 litres, which it is from the floor to the rear hatch if you take the parcel shelf out. That seems like more than 300 litres to me under the parcel shelf. That's a big boot, I think. I think that's a decent size. It goes quite a bit deep, you know, so I think that's, yeah, I'm not sure they've got the right measuring tools with them, because that seems quite big to me. I'll tell you what else is nice is the fact it's got a really wide aperture as well. So if you're loading stuff in, there's a lot of width there. And, you know, width at the back. There's no real wheel arch intrusion. I think it's just under 1 metre wide. Between where wheel arches would be as well. So that's a decent sized boot. It's got a 60-40 split rear seat. So if you fold those down, it takes total capacity up to 1,074 litres as well. I don't have my luggage here with me today because I'm on the UK media drives. Obviously, it looks weird when I turn up with 4 suitcases. But yeah, I think that's more than 300 odd litres. Something wrong there, I think. Nice, fairly flat load entry into the boot as well. There's not really any underfloor storage here because you've just got your warning triangle, your tyre foam and your towing eye just located underneath here. However, you do get some space up at the front, which is quite good as well. But yeah, practical. You get 72 litres of under bonnet storage up at the front, which is really good. You also, which I mean, it fits all your, you know, your charging cable bag in it as well. But Mazda also do this nice little box, which is really handy, so you can pop things in there and just load it in, you know. But that's a real handy bit of space. That the other nice thing about it is if you lift the carpet up and out, there's a drain hole at the bottom as well. So if you're putting wet cables in there, you can take the carpet out, and obviously if they're wet or whatever, or you've got, you know, muddy boots or stuff like that, it's all plastic lined, you can just take all the nice bits out and then just give it a wash and then drain it out later. I think that's a really, I think that's practical. I like that idea. Left-hand drive car, remember, so I'm going to sit behind myself as the driver. Well, there's acres of space back here, and that's what I mean. It's a big car, it's a physically big car, so that long wheelbase really opens up, you know, the rear accommodation of it. It's a little bit, now I need to be careful here, and I say it's a little bit claustrophobic because it's got a dark interior in this car. You've got this massive big panoramic glass sunroof, which is fantastic, you know, and obviously it does feel quite, you know, it does let a lot of light in that sense. But when you go for a dark interior with the car, like this black leather, by the way, which isn't leather, but by the way, Mazda, if this had been dark brown leather, That would have been a real winner for me. You know, the melting copper outside with dark brown leather inside. Oh. Anyway, you get the black headlining and with the black leather and everything, it feels, you know, you feel like a bit closed in, but it feels cosy. That's how my daughter would call it. She said it feels cosy back here, but not in terms of lack of space. There's loads of space around you. You know, loads of leg room here. If I sit behind myself, I can just tuck my feet underneath the seat. There's not a massive amount of room there, but this is okay. But look at the knee room there. You know, headroom's all right. I'd think 6 foot tall passengers, because again, that roofline starting to slope is about here. So it does sort of just encroach into sort of like headroom a little bit if you're sort of like taller, but certainly lounging space. 3 across wouldn't be a problem either, because that's quite a big gap in the centre there. And of course, you've got the completely flat floor. Right. Climate controls in the back, which obviously you've got here. You've got little vents there as well for ventilation. There's mat pockets in the backs of the front seats. There's a USB-C port there. Surprised there's just the one, but there's one. Door bins, yep, and they're shaped for a water bottle, so they'll go in there. Plus as well, oh, bit stiff. Armrest to make it even nicer to lounge back here, plus 2 cup holders in there, and the ISOFIX points are really nice and easy to get to because they're behind plastic covers. 3 head restraints across the back as you'd expect, which are nice and comfortable too. So, as I say, there's plenty of room back here. Just watch the headroom if you've got taller passengers. But as I say, going for a lighter interior, they've got one here with the tan inside, which does really open it up a little bit. I'd always say is just the black interior just makes it feel a little bit more enclosed. But in terms of space, it's not lacking. Right, this is the bit I'm not so sure about, okay? Now, I'd like you to go and watch, once you finish watching this, I'd like to go and watch the House of Cars channel to look at my reviews of the Mazda 3 and the CX-80, the big SUV, because one thing that I think Mazda do really, really well is interiors, and there's an element of their interiors that I really love. Their tactility, their controls and stuff like that just feels really right to me. There's just not very much Mazda here for me. This is the problem I've got now. Now, before MD says, oh, you're just an old fuddy-duddy Brian and stuff, that's the future, embrace it. I get that, I get what you're saying, you know, but there's just something about the way that Mazda do their interiors to me that stands them apart from everyone else. This just feels a bit generic in here. You know, I could be sat in a BYD, I could be sat in, a Changang, you know, that's the other thing, or, a JQ or whatever. It's just, it's okay, but I just feel it's just not very Mazda. That's my issue. Okay. And it does that every time I mention the name of the car. Cancel. Because it's got voice recognition as well, so I can't mention the name of the car, otherwise it does that.
Are you there?
No, cancel. Please go away. Right, what have we got here? Oh.
Which address do you want?
Wong's Chinese takeaway, not that. Just cancel.
You can simply say the number to select the option you want.
Cancel.
Cancelled.
Right, okay. Anyway, 14.6 inch infotainment screen with voice activation, as you saw there, okay? And everything's really controlled through here. Now, there's a couple of little problems I've got with this. You've got some shortcuts here, so if you swipe down, there's your stuff that you maybe need to use a quick there. So navigation, Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, there's a settings menu, stuff like that, okay? And also if you swipe in from that side, if I do that, there we go. What you now have is all the controls that you're going to need to sort of like set the car up, including your lights, including your wipers, including your mirrors. That's all in there, okay? But what you can do is there's 2 favourite buttons on the steering wheel which you can set up. So you could have one as, say, your wipers, and you could have the other as your lights. So that's, okay. So and they're over on the left-hand side of the steering wheel. So they're still within fingertip control. Do you know what I mean? So just rather than on a stock, you could put them on here. But I'd just like a light switch down there, or a wiper stock. That would be really, really nice. There is indicator stock, thankfully. And the actual sort of main beam, and to sort of like wash the windscreen is on this stock here. So you don't need to go into the screen for that. But actually, just turning stuff on is done through here. But see, you can assign them to those favourite buttons that are on this one here. Okay. So that's what you get there. Of course, you get climate control, which is in the screen as well. It's not permanently on in the sense, well, it is, I suppose, in the sense that if you just touch it, the number, there's your, and you can scroll up and down to change it. So it's not ridiculously silly to change it, and then of course you've got this climate menu there. However, the problem that I do have with it is turning the ADAS systems off. Now, I'm driving a Renault 4 now, is my long-term car, and it's a 2-button press. I was driving the new Fiat Grande Panda last week. It's a button on the dashboard to turn it off. I was driving the Citroen C3 Aircross yesterday. It's a button to turn stuff off. This is 4 screens away to turn stuff off on this. That's too much. It's just too much, and I seem like I can remember where it is. So you press it. So let's go back here. Let me show you. So it's the car, I think. Then you come down to Smart Drive. Press that. Then you have to go into. Now you had to go into another one as well. Hang on. Lane departure. Lane departure switch. There it is there. So there's that. Lane change assist. Disable. Speed limit warning assist. Disable. Speed limit change reminder tone. Disable. Overspeed warning. Disable. Okay. That's just too much. It's just too much. And it does that. And of course, because of law, it comes on every time you start the car. I'm sorry, I know, as I say, everyone's going to say, oh, you're an old fuddy-duddy, Brian, embrace it, it's the future. I'm sorry, it's just too much stuff. I don't think you need all of that. Just a button to turn it on off. Or, okay, you could assign that to your shortcuts, but then that means then, you've then got to go into there and do your lights and wipers. Yeah, I just don't think it's the ideal solution. But anyway, there you go, that's what it is. You've got other things here, like the fact, obviously, you can see the car, and obviously it moves as you turn that. That's quite cool. And I think, obviously, it is obviously unique in terms of the colour. It matches the colour of your car, I'm thinking. I think that'd be good. So you can do things like open the boot from there. You can, open all the windows and stuff like that, passenger side window. And as you know, as I say, I'm not going to ask them to do it, but obviously you can see it'll do voice recognition as well. So you could ask it to say, open passenger window or open driver window, stuff like that. It can do that as well. We'll talk about the driving modes when we're out, but basically there is 3. There's normal, sport, he says normal, sport and individual. And obviously you can set those up into individual depending obviously on what you want. There's an augmented reality head-up display as well. And now, if that's the same as the Chang'an one, I have to say that is brilliant. I really like the Chang'an one. That was really good. You also get this digital instrumentation cluster here, which again, it's just not very Mazda-like. And it's quite small. Let me just move that steering wheel up a bit. It's quite small, the actual screen itself. So the speed readout there is quite small. And then you got a power meter on the left, and then obviously you get your miles per hour there on the right. And you can go through, there's various different sort of like trip meters that you can go through to change obviously what you want and see what you need to see there. And it'll display your media up there and also display a map there. But it just feels quite small there, that's all. So yeah, that's my beef really. Is there's just too much in the screen. And as I say, it's such a shame because Mazda do interior so well. Their air conditioning controls on the Mazda 3 and the CX-80 and the MX-5, they're beautiful. They're like turning the bezel on a nice dive watch. They really click. Honda do it as well, and it's just they've removed that, and it's just like one of the nicest things of a Mazda. You've taken it away, and it just feels just a bit too generic in here. Now there's two interiors depending what you go for. As I say, this is a Takumi, which gets sort of like leather-ect, vinyl as we used to call it, which is nice actually. In fairness, it's nice, kind of soft. Seats are quite nice. If you go to the Takumi Plus, however, you get a suede and the Napa leather and micro suede cloth in the interior. That looks really special, I have to say. That does feel quite luxurious on the inside of the car, so that is quite nice. And I'm not going to think of all the interior. There are some really nice little touches with it. You get some nice, the metal like blade door handles. The button which is underneath here for opening up the centre console has just got Mazda etched in it. That's quite nice. I quite like that. You've got Mazda embossed into the seats. The seats themselves are nice. The steering wheel, 2-spoke, flat at the bottom. That's quite nice to use. It's quite a nice steering wheel to hold. And there's a decent amount of storage as well. You can see here, you get your 2 cup holders where I can get my big Yeti water bottle into there. As I showed you earlier, there's a centre cubby there, which is really deep. You know, there's good long, and they're long, the door bins, you know, they're really long, and they'll take an extra water bottle in there. You get a wireless charging pad on this side, and then just a normal sort of like conventional slot for another phone on that side, and then underneath you've got a nice like big storage area there as well, you know, for popping, you know, like an iPad down into or other bits and pieces. As I say, you've got the big glass panoramic roof. One thing to note, if you're a tall driver, a friend of mine who is another guy on YouTube, Tim Rodey, he's really tall. He noted that his head is really close to that header rail, and I must admit mine isn't far away from it. I mean, I'm only 5'8" and he's well over 6 foot, so if you are a taller driver, you've got to go and watch that. That's the only thing. The only other thing I will say as well is, again, because of the design of the car, the rearward visibility is a little bit narrow out that back window, but you know, as I say, other than that, it's okay. You know, the build quality seems to be quite nice as well, but I'm a bit sad it just is so generic in here. That's the only thing for me. As I say, it works, and you know, and there's nothing wrong with it apart from that guy thinking I'm trying to talk to him all the time. And there's just too many different steps in that screen. I just wish there was just more physical controls. And as I say, then that whole scenario of turning off ADAS systems, that's far too long. It's far too long. It's far too laborious to go through all of those screens to find it. It needs to be a shorter system than that. You know, as I say, you can assign it to your favourite buttons up here. I get that, but then surely you want them to be other main controls such as lights and wipers. Why do you not have a button for lights and wipers? Why do you need to do that through a screen? Anyway, there we go. It's an okay interior, which is a bit sad to say because I always feel Mazda interiors are one of the real standout points for them. But actually, if you're okay with it being just a little bit generic and you get on well with tech, and it's not bad tech, then you'll be all right, I suppose. But for me, it could have been better. Right, this is where things get a bit confusing, and if I'm being honest about it, not that great for the Mazda, as far as I'm concerned. I'm going to start, you get two batteries in the car, and I'm going to start with the bigger of the two batteries, because that's the one that just absolutely flummoxes me. I've been reading about it, and I think, that can't be right, but I've double checked, and it is. It's an 80 kilowatt hour battery you get with the bigger battery option, okay? And that gives a WLTP range of 342 miles. Not great, not bad, but not outstanding, is it? You know, okay, it's about average in fairness. But the problem is, it's an NCM battery, okay? Which means its chemistry is not that great, which means its charging speed is, well, I can't think of a better word than woeful. 90 kilowatts is its maximum charging speed, which means for that size of battery to go from a 10 to 80% charge at its maximum charging speed will take over 45 minutes. You what? 45 minutes to do a 10 to 80% charge? That's madness. A Hyundai Ioniq 6, which this car will compete with, does it in half that time. What's going on, Mazda? Anyway, there we go. Yeah, there we are. The smaller battery is much better, 69 kilowatt hours. That gives a range of 297 miles. Still not great, but you know, again, you know, it's not that far away from the bigger batteries thing. That's an LFP battery, which means it'll charge at 165 kilowatts, which means it does 10 to 80% in about 24 minutes. That's much better. Why would you buy the bigger battery? Because here's the other thing. The smaller battery has the more powerful driveline attached to it. Now, I know Mazda's a bit unconventional and a bit quirky at times, but that just doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. But here's the other thing, okay? I'm thinking, going back to that bigger battery and those times we were talking about, that's way behind cars such as, you know, as I say, the Tesla Model 3, the Hyundai Ioniq 6, the BYD Seal. But this week I've also been driving the new Mercedes-Benz CLA with EQ technology, okay? Now, okay, this is a much bigger car than that in the sense of its physical size, but it's a Mercedes-Benz, and I tell you what, that's a fantastic car. That'll do nearly 500 miles of range on a battery of similar size to this. And its charging capabilities, they're saying that you can add over 200 miles of range in that car in just 10 minutes. Come on, Mazda, what are you doing? This is just not competitive enough. You know, we're supposed to be making progress with these type of cars and the batteries and the charging speeds and things like that. You seem to be going a bit backwards, I think. Now, like I said, it's a bit odd, this car, because it depends on the battery size to the power. That's not the odd thing about it, but the odd thing is the bigger battery car, which is normally the more powerful, is actually the least powerful. It's the smaller battery that's more powerful. Does that make sense? It doesn't to me, but there you go. So this is the bigger battery car, which means there's not a lot in it, in fairness. It's 245 PS you get from this bigger battery car, which gives it a 0 to 60 time of 7.8 seconds. If you go for the smaller battery car, it gets 258 PS, which brings the 0 to 60 time down from 7.8 seconds to 7.3 seconds. So as I say, there's not a massive load in it. How does it feel? Here's the thing. For me, it sort of just lacks any distinction, which is a real shame because it's a Mazda. And Mazda have always been very, very good at sort of like having real sort of like distinction in their cars and the way that they drive. You know, they've spent years honing the MX-5 with its steering, you know, and sort of like its dynamics and its chassis. And this car just doesn't feel distinctive enough for me, you know? And that's what I mean. It doesn't do anything particularly wrong, but nor does it really stand out. And I feel it would be nice if it sort of stood out and had some form of, you know, sort of like way of going, wow, that's a, you know, the Mazda 6e, that's a really great car to drive. You know, a Polestar 2 doesn't drive like a Tesla Model 3, which doesn't drive like a BMW i4, which doesn't drive like a Hyundai Ioniq 6. Each one have their own individual characters. This sort of doesn't. It could be anything, this car. And a Mazda's a car that feels like a Mazda. It's, put it this way, it's a little bit like, you know, sort of like a recipe, isn't it? You know, if you don't have sort of like all the right and good ingredients right at the start, then the meal's not going to be that great no matter who's cooking it. Does that make sense? It's a bit like that. If you start off with fairly sort of like average ingredients, you're not going to be able to create something really, really special. And that's how I feel about this car. The ride comfort is okay on longer, you know, on faster open roads and longer undulations. It starts to crumble a bit when you get it sort of like roundabout town at lower speed on harsher surfaces. There's a lot of noise and interference comes from underneath the car. You know, not just tyre noise, you know, road noise, you know, but also sort of like a little bit of suspension noise as well. You're not quite isolated from it from a refinement point of view. You know, I don't mind being sort of like, you know, feeling what's happening when you're in a sort of like a sporty mood as such, but you don't get that with this car. It's just noise, it's just chatter, and I don't really, you know, it doesn't help. That's what I'm trying to say very badly. But by far the biggest issue with the car for me is this overly light steering. There's no real precision in the steering, and that's when you feel like it's not really a Mazda, because you know that an MX-5 is, you know, pin sharp and really darty. Now, I'm not saying it should drive like an MX-5, but you know what I'm saying, the DNA of the company should be evident throughout the car, like it is in most other cars. You know, I've been driving a lot of Mazdas over the last, you know, 18 months or so. You know, you drive the big CX-80 SUV, and there's a lot there that reminds you of the smaller Mazda 3 hatchback. You know, the way it drives. This doesn't. This genuinely could have any badge on the steering wheel and a, you know, sort of like an unknown Chinese brand, and genuinely you'd go, yeah. You know, as I say, it's not a bad car. You know, it drives perfectly well. Somebody will drive this car and go, that's really, really nice, and it is. You know, there's a lot to sort of like about it, but when you drive it in comparison with, it's a bit like the MG IMs. You know, they didn't really feel like MGs, and arguably they're not MGs. But you know, that's what I'm trying to say very badly. It's just, it doesn't have any real distinction to it. There's not sort of like something in this car that goes, wow, that's the car that I want to own, instead of the Tesla Model 3, instead of the BMW i4, instead of the Polestar 2. There's just nothing really stand out with the car. What I will say is, in terms of its driving position and its comfort, is actually really nice. So, you know, the seat holds you really quite well. You know, you do sort of like sit in the seat, which is nice. You've got a really good driving position. I've kept The lane keep assist on, by the way, because I'm also driving a left-hand drive car in the UK, so it's always nice to have that little bit extra backup to make sure you don't have, because you always have that tendency to wander towards the middle of the road when you're driving a left-hand drive car in the UK, I certainly sometimes feel like that. Is it intrusive? Well, let's just see. There's nothing behind me. Let me just get round this sort of corner here. As I move to sort of like the middle of the road, you do get the little tug back in. It's not overtly intrusive. It doesn't, sort of like start beeping at you and go mad at you saying, how dare you? Where do you think you're doing? It doesn't do any of that. But, as I say, it's just that sort of gentle, what are you doing? Back into your lane. Come on now. Which is quite nice to have. You can obviously turn the things off, as I was showing you earlier. So you can turn off, oh, hello, the lane keep assist and the speed limit warning, but it does take quite a, sort of like a thing to go through all the menu system and turn it all off. As I say, you can assign it to a favourite button here, but I think you'd want that to be more of your lights and your wipers, which you need more of, quicker access to personally, rather than the ADAS systems. So as I see, a nice driving position. The steering wheel, oddly enough, the steering wheel is actually really, really nice to hold. Sorry, I'm going down a single track road in a left-hand drive car with people coming towards me, which is handy. Always nice to do that. The steering wheel itself is actually quite nice to hold, which is odd because, as I say, there's no real joy to be had from the actual steering itself. So that's a bit of a shame. You've got a mode button on the steering column here. The steering wheel here on this spoke. So you can change through your different modes. So you've got 3 of them, which is nice. It's not silly in terms of how much you can actually alter the car. So you've got normal, sport and individual. And obviously when it's in individual, you can set the car up how you want it. So you can alter the steering feel and things like that. But it never ever feels as pin sharp as you want it to. And I have to say, the actual sort of like throttle response from the car, there's not a massive change when you go from normal into the sport mode. It doesn't change a huge amount. So arguably, is that really, there could be more, again, it's lacking distinction. There could be more distinction between the modes. That's the other thing. You can alter brake regen as well, but again, you have to go through the screen to alter the brake regeneration on the car. No, sorry, it's just going through these little villages with vans coming at you from everywhere. You've got to go through the screen to alter the brake regen of the car, and again, that's a little bit of a pain in the posterior as well. It'd be nice again, I know you can set it up as a favourite, but how many favourite buttons would you have? Do you know what I mean? It's just a bit of a shame, that's all. I was sort of expecting, I love the way the car looks. I genuinely do. I love the way the car looks. I think the car looks brilliant. It's got a load of interior space. There's a lot to recommend it from that point of view. But for me, there's 2 things that really do, well, 3 things in some respects that really let it down. The battery tech I find just odd. I really find that really bizarre. This whole, the big battery having sort of like such a bad charging speed and stuff like that. I just find that really, really odd. The interior, it's usable and it's fine, but it lacks any sort of like flair that like Mazda has. And then the drive of it is much the same. It's fine, it's absolutely okay, but it lacks any flair like I would expect from a Mazda. There's no real joy to be had driving this car sort of like down the road. I'll get in my Renault 4 and drive home today and this will be fairly forgettable to drive this car. And for me, Mazdas have always been quite memorable to drive. They've always been good cars. They've always been real drivers' cars. There's always been a real focus with them. And I just feel this car lacks focus. It's a real middle of the road car. And being middle of the road isn't really where Mazda should be, especially coming to this sector of the market, after everyone else, with more coming out. you know, they need to be out in front. And I just feel that with this car, they're just playing a bit of catch up, and all the others are making headway. They're getting away from them. Price. Haven't got a clue, can't tell you, don't know what it is, haven't announced prices for the car yet. Car doesn't go on sale in the UK until 2026, but look, let's hazard a guess at where it's going to be. It's probably going to be somewhere around about between 40 to 50,000 pounds, maybe just creeping into that lower 50,000 pound bracket, because obviously, say, given the market that it's going to compete into, that's where all those cars are sort of round about. There's two trim levels, as I say, that has been decided on. You're going to get the Takumi and then the Takumi Plus. Even the base Takumi version, which this car is, in fairness, is really well equipped as standard. And I think obviously that'll probably be the other thing as well. You'll probably find that most of the equipment will be standard on the car. You know, it'll be only things like optional, you know, paint colours and stuff like that. That'll probably just be the optional extras on the car. You know, and Mazdas tend to have quite good residual values. So that's the other thing, maybe whole life costs or leasing costs or PCP deals will be quite an interesting one to look at, because say Mazda tend to be quite good on residuals. But the only thing is, I just feel that, and I don't want to keep harping on about it, but that battery technology, you know, with that bigger battery, I'm just not sure about that. The car, that makes the car feel very dated before it's even launched in the UK yet. So maybe sort of like, you know, the smaller battery but maybe higher trim level might be sort of like the better option to choose if you're looking at the car. But yeah, I can't tell you how much it's going to be because I don't know. What I do know and what I can tell you about is the cars that you might also consider if you're looking at the Mazda 6e. I think the main car that you might consider against this one is the Volkswagen ID.7, because like the Volkswagen, the Mazda is quite big in this D sector of the market. You know, it sits right at the top end of that in terms of its physical size. It's almost the size of the BMW i5, Mercedes-Benz EQE. So if they're just a little bit too big for you, but you need the space in this market sector, these are the two cars I think that are, you know, really level pegging. ID.7 is a main competitor for this. But of course there are others. It's not as big as the SUV market, but there's still a lot to choose from. And of course the main one you're also going to think about is the Tesla Model 3. Why wouldn't you? It's been around for a while now, it's a really good car. So Tesla Model 3 is certainly a consideration here. And obviously if you're going to consider the Model 3, then you've got to consider that its main rivals as well, which is things such as the Polestar 2. That's starting to feel its age a little bit now. That's the only thing I will say with the Polestar 2. I love it. I really love the way it drives, love the way it looks, I love everything about the Polestar, but there's no doubt it is starting to feel a little bit of its age now, especially with newer Polestar product that I've driven as well. So anyway, the Polestar 2 is certainly a consideration. BMW, well, normally we would turn around and say, well, you've got the i4, and you do, you still have the i4, but it's again a bit more of that sort of coupe, four-door coupe style of car, like the 4 Series Grand Coupe. But remember, BMW are electrifying the new 3 Series that's coming out, so the Neue Class version of the 3 Series. They've done it with the iX3 SUV, the next one is going to be the 3 Series Saloon, which will be called i3, okay? So that's a car to consider as well. So I think that's going to be quite good. Of course, there's BYD with the Seal. I think the Seal is their best product. I like BYD as a company. Some of the products have been a bit hit and miss for me, but not the Seal. The Seal has been a big hit for me. I love the way it looks, I love the way it drives, I love the interior of it, I think it's priced right. That's a really good car, and that's a car to consider. There's also MG in this marketplace. Now, the IM5. Now, here's the thing. I got a lot of grief over that review because people said, oh, you just kept going about the fact it's not got an MG badge on it. I did say the fact it should have an MG badge on it. I get it, it's a sub-brand type of thing, but and I'm not its biggest fan, if I'm honest. It's all right. I think the SUV, the IM6, is the better car, personally. But there's no denying that you do get an awful lot for your money with that IM5. So MG are now a player in this marketplace. Hyundai, of course, you've got the Ioniq 6. That's another car to consider. And that's just gone through a big facelift as well, but that's a brilliant car in terms of, I like the way it looks, in fairness. I always have. I know it divides opinion, but I love the Ioniq 6. But in terms of its charging speeds, its efficiency, that type of thing, that's a car that really, really beats this one in terms of that. But talking of that, the car that I drove 3 days ago, the Mercedes-Benz CLA with EQ technology. Now, here's the thing, the CLA is Mercedes' smallest four-door offering, and it is a bit more of that sort of coupe, four-door coupe style of car, but it has grown in size. It's not far off, you know, it's Tesla Model 3 size now, so it has got a bit bigger. And in terms of its range, its charging speed, just how it drives. That car is a phenomenal car. And if you're on these cars are on your company car list, and maybe 90% of the time you're in the car on your own, that is certainly a competitor for this car, because it has a starting price of £45,000 and it's a Mercedes-Benz. So, as I say, there's certainly loads of cars to consider within this market space. Some have their plus points, some, negative points, but Mazda's not going to have an easy time of it, because it's still quite a strongly competitive market space that the new 6e is heading into. Let me start first of all by saying this. This is not a bad car. In many ways, it's a good car, and there'll be a lot of people who will drive this car and will really like it, and they've got every reason to like it. It's very spacious inside. It's very well equipped. We don't know how much it's going to cost yet, but I can't see Mazda getting that completely wrong. But key for me, and more important, it looks fantastic, because it looks like a Mazda should, which makes it all the more of a shame that it doesn't drive like a Mazda should drive. This car for me lacks any real distinction, and Mazdas never lack distinction. They've always got something about them that makes them quite memorable to drive. Unfortunately, the new 6e is not that car. The battery tech also feels a little bit last generation to me. It feels a little bit like a BlackBerry in an iPhone world. Now, don't get me wrong, some people still use BlackBerries, and that's fine. But for the rest of us, we know that there's a better option out there for the same money. And that's the Mazda 6e's problem. It's moving into a class where there is an awful lot better cars, a lot of better options for the same money. So as I say, whilst it is a very good car and a very decent electric car, it's quite a forgettable Mazda. And for me, that's the real disappointment. Thank you for watching another road test review here on House of Cars. Please make sure you are subscribed to the House of Cars channel, and then when you've done that, make sure you've also turned on your notifications so that you don't miss the next episode when it's uploaded and it's gone live. If you have enjoyed this review, make sure you give it a thumbs up, and of course, as always, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think about the cars that feature on the channel and on the House of Cars channel overall. Now, if you want to follow me over on social media, you can find me on Instagram at House of Cars 1973, so I'd certainly appreciate your support there as well. And remember, whether or not it is a new car or an old car, a small car or a large car, a slow car or a fast car, you'll find them all here in the House of Cars. Thank you again for watching. Thank you for your continued support. I'll see you again soon.